It's a quiet morning in a bustling downtown courtroom. The sun pierces through the tall, narrow windows, bathing the space in a warm glow. The clock strikes 9 a.m. Rows of wooden benches are filled with spectators, a mixture of curious onlookers and those emotionally invested in the outcome of this high-stakes case. The room carries a solemn energy as the judge takes a seat. On one side of the courtroom sits James Thornton, a man of quiet determination. His tailored suit and calm demeanor reflect years of discipline and resolve. Across the aisle sits Olivia Carter, poised and confident, her carefully chosen attire suggesting both ambition and entitlement. The stakes are high, and the decision that awaits will ripple through both their lives. This is not just a legal battle. It's a test of values, fairness, and the very definition of justice. The courtroom falls silent as the proceedings begin. Welcome to True Crime Hub, your home for real-life stories of crime, justice, and the pursuit of truth. From gripping courtroom dramas to chilling mysteries, we uncover the details behind the cases that captivate us all. Thank you to our amazing subscribers and viewers for your continued support. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories. Give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comment section. Your engagement helps us bring more of these incredible stories to light. Let's get into today's compelling true crime story. James Thornton's story begins years before this pivotal day. Born in a small Colorado town, he grew up with modest means, learning from his parents the value of hard work. By his 20s, James had built a landscaping company from scratch. Early mornings, long hours, and an eye for detail transformed his small venture into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Success didn't come easy, but it was earned through persistence and sacrifice. James met Olivia Carter during a business conference in Denver. She was charming, well-spoken, and ambitious in her own right. They married 2 years later, surrounded by friends and family who believed they were destined for greatness together. The early years of their marriage were filled with shared dreams and successes. But over time, cracks began to appear. James dedicated himself to growing his business, while Olivia embraced the comforts of their newfound wealth. As the years went on, the differences between them became undeniable. Olivia developed a taste for a lifestyle that James could no longer justify. Expensive vacations, designer wardrobes, and lavish parties became routine. Meanwhile, James spent more time at the office, trying to sustain the lifestyle she demanded. Resentment grew quietly between them, unspoken but ever-present. When Olivia filed for divorce after 12 years of marriage, the demand she made shocked everyone who knew them. The date is set for the final hearing. It's a brisk November morning in downtown Denver. The courtroom fills quickly as James and Olivia prepare to face off. Olivia is seeking half of James's assets, including a significant stake in the business he built. Her attorneys argue that she played an essential role in his success, supporting him emotionally and managing their home. James's team counters with meticulously organized financial records, showing that the business grew solely from his labor, strategy, and risk-taking. As the proceedings unfold, Olivia's confidence never wavers. Her attorneys present her as a devoted wife who deserves to share in the wealth she enjoyed during the marriage. But James's team is prepared. They present a detailed breakdown of Olivia's spending over the past 5 years. Luxury trips, high-end fashion purchases, and personal investments that had little to do with their shared life or the business itself. The judge listens carefully, her expression neutral. It's mid-afternoon when she asks Olivia a direct question. What role did you play in the financial success of this company? The question lingers in the air, and for the first time, Olivia's confident demeanor falters. She hesitates, searching for the right words, but her response lacks conviction. The room remains silent as the judge makes a note. James sits quietly, his attorney leaning in to whisper something reassuring. He knows the case is turning in his favor, but his emotions are conflicted. He isn't here to punish Olivia. He's here to protect what he built. As the day progresses, testimonies from financial experts and close acquaintances paint a clearer picture of their life together. James is shown as a man who sacrificed everything to create a legacy, while Olivia's focus was on maintaining appearances. The next morning, the final arguments are made. Olivia's attorneys push for an emotional appeal, emphasizing the lifestyle she's become accustomed to and the supposed sacrifices she made. James's team focuses on fairness, arguing that while Olivia deserves a settlement, it should reflect her actual contributions to the marriage, not an exaggerated sense of entitlement. The judge retreats to her chambers to deliberate. The courtroom buzzes with quiet speculation. Hours pass before everyone is called back. It's nearly 5 p.m. when the judge delivers her verdict. Olivia will receive a fair division of assets, including a portion of their shared properties and savings. However, the business remains solely in James's name. The judge emphasizes that while Olivia is entitled to support, she is also capable of building her own future. Fairness does not mean excess, the judge states firmly. Olivia's expression shifts from confidence to disbelief. James closes his eyes for a moment, a quiet relief washing over him. The courtroom begins to empty as reporters gather outside, eager to capture reactions. James steps outside into the cold evening air, his attorney at his side. He knows the fight is over, but the lessons it brought will stay with him forever. This case is more than a courtroom drama. It's a reminder that fairness and accountability go hand in hand. For James, it's the beginning of a new chapter, one where he can move forward without the weight of unfair demands. For Olivia, it's a moment of reckoning, a chance to redefine her future on her own terms. This story serves as a powerful example of justice, dignity, and the rejection of greed. James Thornton grew up in the heart of Colorado, in a small town nestled at the base of the Rockies. It's early spring in the late 1990s. The days are long, filled with hard labor in his parents' garden center, a modest family business that taught James the value of perseverance. At 6 a.m., as the morning mist rolled over the fields, James would load trucks with plants and supplies, his mind already racing with ideas for something bigger. By his 20s, James had taken his savings and launched a small landscaping business. Starting with nothing but a rusted pickup truck and a borrowed lawnmower, he worked tirelessly, rain or shine, often until the street lights flickered on late at night. By his mid-30s, James's business had transformed into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. His company serviced sprawling estates, corporate properties, and high-profile clients across the region. With success came long hours, complex negotiations, and endless sacrifices. James rarely took time off. His focus was singular, to secure a future that was better than his humble beginnings. But the pressure was relentless, and his personal life took a back seat. In the summer of 2010, James attended a networking event in Denver. It was here, amid the polished floors of a downtown hotel conference room, that he met Olivia Carter. She was magnetic, commanding attention with her quick wit and charm. Olivia was ambitious, working as a consultant for high-end clientele. She and James connected immediately, their shared drive for success sparking a whirlwind romance. Within 2 years, they were married in a picturesque ceremony under the Colorado sky, surrounded by family and friends. For the first few years, life seemed idyllic. They purchased a beautiful home in the Denver suburbs, complete with manicured lawns and panoramic mountain views. Together, they enjoyed the fruits of James's labor, lavish vacations, expensive cars, and fine dining. Yet, beneath the surface, their differences began to emerge. James's long hours at work left Olivia feeling isolated. Olivia, meanwhile, found comfort in a lifestyle of luxury, one that James struggled to reconcile with his values. It's the fall of 2017. The tension between them is undeniable. Olivia's shopping trips grow more extravagant, her social calendar filled with high society events. James, now in his early 40s, spends more time at the office, working to sustain their lifestyle. They argue often, their once shared goals now pulling them in opposite directions. By winter, Olivia files for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. James, blindsided but resolute, prepares for the battle ahead. As the divorce proceedings begin, Olivia makes her demands clear. She wants half of everything, James's assets, properties, and even a stake in the business he built from the ground up. Her lawyers argue that she contributed emotionally to James's success and should be entitled to an equal share. But James knows the truth. While Olivia enjoyed the comforts his hard work provided, her role in building the business was negligible. Determined to protect what he created, James begins gathering evidence to make his case. When the court filings arrived in early January 2018, the demands were staggering. Olivia Carter was seeking half of James Thornton's wealth, including a controlling stake in the company he had spent 2 decades building. The documents outlined her claim. She deserved equal ownership due to their shared marital lifestyle. For James, it wasn't just a financial blow, it was personal. The thought of losing control of his company, the culmination of years of sacrifice, felt like an attack on his very identity. It's a cold winter morning in Denver, the city shrouded in fog. At 7 a.m., James sits in his home office, surrounded by stacks of papers, receipts, and financial statements. His attorney, Mark Reynolds, arrives shortly after. Mark, a seasoned family lawyer with a reputation for precision, lays out the strategy. Their approach would focus on evidence, proof of James's sole contributions to the business and Olivia's minimal involvement. James listens intently, his hands clenched as Mark outlines what's at stake. It's not just about the money. It's about fairness and protecting the future of the business. Later that day, at 3 p.m., James visits his company headquarters on the outskirts of Denver. The building stands as a testament to his hard work, a sleek, modern structure surrounded by acres of perfectly landscaped grounds. Inside, his employees are hard at work, unaware of the personal battle their employer is facing. James walks through the office, observing the teams he built from scratch. This, he thinks to himself, is why he can't give in. Losing control of the company would mean jeopardizing everything, including the livelihoods of his employees. By the following week, James and his legal team are deep into preparation. The dining table in James's home has transformed into a makeshift war room. At 10 p.m., under the dim light of a desk lamp, James reviews financial records from the past decade. Every invoice, payroll report, and client contract becomes a piece of the puzzle they are building. His focus is unwavering. While Olivia's team prepares to argue her emotional contributions to the marriage, James focuses on the tangible facts that support his case. Suspense builds as the first court date approaches. On a crisp February morning, James steps into the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. The towering building, with its marble columns and echoing halls, feels imposing, but James's resolve is firm. Olivia arrives shortly after, her attorney by her side, her confidence apparent. As they pass each other in the hallway, there's no exchange of words, only a brief glance that speaks volumes about the tension between them. The courtroom proceedings begin promptly at 9 a.m. James sits at the defendant's table, his attorney calmly presenting their initial arguments. Across the aisle, Olivia's legal team outlines her demands, painting a picture of a devoted wife who supported her husband through thick and thin. But James knows the truth. He remains composed, knowing that the evidence they've gathered will be the key to protecting what he's worked so hard to build. The fight is just beginning, but James has made his decision. He will stand his ground, not out of spite, but to ensure that fairness prevails. For him, this isn't just about winning. It's about preserving the integrity of everything he has built. Olivia Carter arrived at the Denver County Courthouse on a crisp February morning. It was 8:45 a.m., and the sidewalks were buzzing with activity. Reporters hovered nearby, sensing the weight of the case unfolding inside. Dressed impeccably in a tailored coat and heels, Olivia exuded confidence as she stepped through the courthouse doors. Her demeanor was poised, every movement deliberate, as if she was stepping onto a stage. In the courtroom, Olivia sat at the plaintiff's table, surrounded by her legal team. Her lead attorney, a sharp-tongued litigator with a reputation for aggressive tactics, presented her as a devoted wife who had sacrificed her ambitions to support James's rise to success. The story painted in opening arguments was one of emotional labor, unwavering partnership, and contributions that, while intangible, were invaluable. But the evidence began to reveal a different narrative. Financial records, submitted by James's legal team, provided a stark contrast to Olivia's claims. They highlighted a lifestyle that seemed less about shared partnership and more about personal indulgence. Invoices for designer clothing, five-star vacations, and luxury real estate appeared one after another. Properties in Aspen, European shopping sprees, and extravagant jewelry purchases told a story of spending far beyond necessity. It's mid-morning when the first witness is called, a financial analyst who had reviewed years of expenses. At 10:15 a.m., the analyst takes the stand and systematically dissects Olivia's financial history. With every piece of evidence, the confident image Olivia had cultivated begins to crack. The courtroom sits in silence as the analyst presents receipts for purchases made in the months leading up to the divorce filing, raising questions about her motives. By lunchtime, the tension in the courtroom is palpable. While Olivia's legal team works to redirect the narrative, James's attorneys continue to build their case with precision. They argue that the business, built solely by James's vision and effort, was never a joint endeavor. Documents and timelines reinforce the claim that Olivia's role in the company's success was, at best, peripheral. Olivia's presence in the courtroom remains composed, but there are subtle moments where her confidence wavers. A flicker of hesitation during questioning, a quick glance at her attorney, a shift in her posture. These details don't go unnoticed by the judge, who observes every interaction carefully. As the first day of proceedings comes to a close, the divide between Olivia's narrative and the documented evidence grows sharper. This case is no longer about a marriage's end. It has become a battle over truth, fairness, and the limits of entitlement. For Olivia, the stakes are personal and financial. For James, they are about protecting everything he has worked for. The stage is set for the conflict to intensify. The courtroom clock struck 11:30 a.m. on the second day of proceedings. The Denver County Courthouse was silent except for the steady voice of Olivia's attorney. With polished rhetoric, they argued that Olivia's emotional support and presence during the early years of James's business were instrumental in his success. They emphasized the intangible contributions she brought to the marriage: encouragement during tough times, hosting networking events, and managing the household. Their argument was clear. Olivia's role, though less visible, was equally significant, and she deserved half of James's wealth. Across the aisle, James sat motionless, his expression steady but focused. His attorney, Mark Reynolds, waited for his moment. At precisely 11:45 a.m., Mark stood and presented a different narrative. He introduced a series of meticulously organized financial records, each document carefully selected to challenge the claims being made. These records painted a stark picture: years of luxury spending that bore no relation to the business's growth or sustainability. The courtroom watched as expenses were detailed: designer handbags, luxury vehicles, international first-class flights, and purchases that had nothing to do with shared marital goals. The tension in the room heightened as the evidence continued to mount. At 12:10 p.m., Mark called a key witness, a former accountant who had worked for James's business during the marriage. The witness testified under oath, confirming that Olivia had never been involved in the business's finances, operations, or decision-making. Each statement further distanced Olivia from the narrative her attorneys had constructed. The turning point came just after lunch, at 1:45 p.m. The judge, a seasoned professional with years of experience in family law, leaned forward and directed a question to Olivia. Her tone was measured but firm. "What role did you play in creating this wealth?" The question hung in the air, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Olivia, who had maintained composure throughout the trial, hesitated. She glanced toward her attorney, then back at the judge. Her response, a fragmented explanation of emotional support and shared dreams, lacked the clarity and conviction needed to counter the evidence presented. The judge's expression remained neutral, but her pen moved steadily across her notebook. In that moment, the balance began to shift. The silence spoke louder than any argument. The courtroom, filled with reporters, onlookers, and legal teams, seemed to collectively hold its breath. By 3 p.m., the tone of the trial had shifted dramatically. James's team continued to solidify their case, their evidence precise and unyielding. Olivia's team scrambled to regain control of the narrative, but the cracks in their argument were now evident. What had begun as a seemingly balanced legal battle was now tilting heavily in favor of fairness, truth, and accountability. The conflict had reached a pivotal moment, one that would define the outcome of the case. It was nearing midnight on a cold March evening. The streets outside James Thornton's Denver home were quiet, the faint hum of distant traffic the only sound breaking the stillness. Inside, James sat alone in his study, the soft glow of a desk lamp illuminating a cluttered table. Stacks of legal documents, financial spreadsheets, and notes from his attorney surrounded him. The weight of the trial pressed heavily on his shoulders, and the quiet of the night seemed to amplify his thoughts. James stared at a framed photo on his desk, a picture taken years ago at the grand opening of his company's first office building. In the photo, he stood beaming, holding the oversized scissors used to cut the ceremonial ribbon. The memory of that day, of the years of sacrifice that led to that moment, swirled in his mind. It was a reminder of everything he had built and the people who depended on him: employees, clients, and even his family. Yet, as he thought about the ongoing trial, doubt began to creep in. His attorney had warned him of the risks. Drawn-out legal battles could take a toll not only on his finances but also on his mental health. Olivia's demands, though excessive, could be settled quickly if he chose to compromise. The idea of putting the trial behind him and moving on was tempting. But as the thought lingered, so did a deep sense of unease. Would giving in mean sacrificing his principles? It was 1 a.m. when James finally leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. He thought about the values his parents had instilled in him as a boy in Colorado: fairness, hard work, and accountability. This wasn't just about him. It was about protecting the integrity of what he had built and standing up for what he believed was right. For James, settling meant accepting an imbalance, a compromise that would undermine everything he had worked for. As dawn broke, James's decision became clear. This fight wasn't about greed or revenge. It was about fairness. He wasn't fighting to deny Olivia her rightful share. He was fighting to ensure that what she received reflected her actual contributions, not a sense of entitlement. At 6:30 a.m., James drafted an email to his attorney, affirming his commitment to see the trial through. The words came easily, his conviction now steady and resolute. By the time the city woke up and the streets filled with the bustle of a new day, James felt a renewed sense of purpose. His path was set, and while the journey ahead would be challenging, he knew he was standing on solid ground. This wasn't about winning or losing. It was about protecting what was fair, for himself and for everyone who relied on him. For the first time in weeks, James felt at peace with his decision. The sun rose slowly over downtown Denver, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. It was 8 a.m., and the final day of proceedings had arrived. Reporters gathered outside, their cameras poised, sensing the significance of the day's events. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was tense, the quiet murmur of voices creating a subdued backdrop. James Thornton arrived early, walking through the towering marble columns with his attorney, Reynolds, at his side. His face was calm but resolute, a reflection of the long battle he had fought to reach this moment. Olivia Carter arrived minutes later, her confidence undeterred. Dressed sharply, she entered the courtroom flanked by her legal team, her expression betraying no uncertainty. The room filled quickly, every seat taken by spectators eager to witness the conclusion of this high-profile case. At precisely 9 a.m., the judge entered, and the room fell silent. This was it, the culmination of months of arguments, evidence, and strategy. The morning began with closing statements. Olivia's attorneys made their final plea, emphasizing her sacrifices during the marriage and her entitlement to the lifestyle she had enjoyed. They painted her as a partner who had supported James through his rise to success, calling for a division of assets that would reflect equality and shared achievement. James's attorney, Mark, rose next. His tone was measured but firm as he reiterated the evidence presented over the past weeks. He highlighted the financial records, witness testimonies, and timelines that demonstrated the truth. James had built his business independently, with minimal involvement from Olivia. Mark emphasized that fairness did not mean granting an undue share of wealth, but rather ensuring a just and equitable settlement. It was 11:30 a.m. when the judge finally spoke. The room fell completely silent as she began her remarks, her voice steady and authoritative. She acknowledged the complexities of the case, recognizing the emotional weight carried by both parties. But her decision was clear. She ruled that Olivia would receive a modest portion of their shared assets, reflecting her genuine contributions to the marriage but excluding any claims on James's business. The judge's words were deliberate. Fairness means accountability. While it is important to recognize the role of both partners in a marriage, this court cannot disregard the evidence that shows the business was built solely through Mr. Thornton's efforts. The courtroom remained still as the verdict sank in. Olivia sat motionless, her composure momentarily faltering. Across the aisle, James exhaled quietly, the weight of months of uncertainty lifting from his shoulders. The judge continued, emphasizing Olivia's capacity for independence, stating, "This ruling does not diminish your potential. It reflects an opportunity to build your future on your own terms." By 1 p.m., the courtroom began to clear. James stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air, reporters rushing forward with questions. He declined to comment, his focus now on moving forward. Olivia left through a side entrance, avoiding the cameras. As the courthouse doors closed behind him, James felt a deep sense of relief. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about standing for fairness and protecting what he had built. The verdict marked the end of a grueling chapter. But it was also the beginning of something new. For James, it was a reaffirmation of his principles and the values that had guided him throughout his life. For Olivia, it was a turning point, a moment to reflect and redefine her path. Justice had been served, not through vengeance, but through balance and accountability. The days following the trial were quiet, but the impact of the verdict lingered. James returned to his office, resuming his work with a renewed sense of purpose. His employees noticed the change in him. Not just the weight lifted from his shoulders, but a quiet peace that had replaced the tension that had gripped him for months. At 8:30 a.m. on the morning after the verdict, James sat in his corner office overlooking the city, reflecting on the battle he had just endured. The financial victory was clear. His business, his life's work, was safe. But the emotional cost was harder to quantify. His marriage, once a source of pride, had ended in acrimony, and the personal toll of the divorce lingered in his every step. As the days turned into weeks, James found himself wrestling with the complexity of what had transpired. The victory in court, while necessary, had not erased the pain. The memories of his years with Olivia, the shared goals, and the dreams they had once built together, now felt like distant echoes. Though the business had been protected, the personal consequences weighed heavily on him. He knew it would take time to heal. But he also understood that moving forward meant accepting that sometimes justice comes at a price. Meanwhile, Olivia faced the aftermath of the decision with a sense of loss, but also a quiet realization. The judgment had been clear. She had been given a fair settlement, but it was far less than she had hoped for. She had fought for more, convinced that her contributions to the marriage deserved a larger share. Yet, as the weeks passed, she began to understand that the court's decision wasn't just about money. It was about accountability. Her lifestyle had been lavish, her expectations high, but the reality was that she had not contributed in the ways she had claimed. Olivia had to come to terms with the fact that her journey forward would require her to stand on her own, without the financial cushion she had once relied on. Late one evening, Olivia sat in her apartment overlooking the city, the view now a stark reminder of the life she had hoped to maintain. She had taken some time away from the public eye, focusing on herself and the future that lay ahead. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration, and even regret, as she processed the lessons learned from the trial. She would need to rebuild, but this time, it would be on her own terms. The verdict had forced her to face the reality of her situation, a reality that would require self-reliance and personal growth. For both James and Olivia, the divorce had become a turning point. It was no longer just about assets, claims, or legal victories. It had become a lesson in fairness, balance, and the consequences of entitlement. Their story, of struggle, of loss, and ultimately of justice, had become a symbol of what happens when accountability prevails. It was a story that would resonate far beyond the courtroom, touching the lives of those who saw the unfolding drama as more than just a legal battle. It was a reminder that fairness is not just about dividing assets. It's about recognizing one's true contributions and taking responsibility for one's own future. As the months passed, both James and Olivia began to rebuild. James focused on expanding his business, finding new ways to innovate and grow, his vision now clearer than ever. Olivia, though facing challenges, found a renewed sense of purpose in pursuing her own career, her own path forward. They may have come from different perspectives, but both had learned the value of independence, the importance of fairness, and the need for accountability. Though their lives had taken different paths, the lessons they learned in the courtroom would shape their futures. For James, it was about more than protecting his business. It was about standing firm in his values. For Olivia, it was about understanding that the real value came not from what she could take, but from what she could build for herself. This story is about more than the legal arguments, the courtroom battles, or even the verdict itself. It's a reflection on the deeper principles that define the relationships we build and the legacies we leave behind. At its heart, this is a story of fairness, a value that must be the cornerstone of every relationship, whether in business, marriage, or any partnership. For James Thornton, The Courtroom victory was not just about protecting his business or his financial future. It was a stand for the principles he had lived by since his humble beginnings. The belief that hard work, accountability, and integrity should never be compromised. His journey reminds us that fairness isn't about denying others. It's about ensuring that everyone receives what they've truly earned. For Olivia Carter, the experience was a turning point. Her demands, rooted in entitlement rather than contribution, forced her to confront hard truths about herself and her role in the marriage. The outcome was not what she expected, but it became an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. Her story teaches us that true independence comes not from relying on others, but from building something meaningful on our own. This case became more than a personal struggle between two individuals. It was a cautionary tale, a symbol of balance and accountability in a world where fairness can sometimes feel elusive. It served as a reminder that entitlement without contribution is unsustainable, that relationships thrive on mutual respect, and that justice, while not always easy, is worth pursuing. As we reflect on James and Olivia's journey, we are reminded that life is filled with choices that shape not only our own paths but the lives of those around us. The choices we make in our relationships, our careers, and our moments of conflict define who we are and what we stand for. In the end, James and Olivia took different paths, but their stories are intertwined in a lesson that resonates far beyond the walls of the courtroom. For James, it was a reaffirmation of the values that had guided him throughout his life. For Olivia, it was a moment to reset and rebuild, to chart a future grounded in independence and personal growth. This story leaves us with an enduring message. Dignity and responsibility are the foundation of fairness. Whether in the smallest interactions or the largest trials, these principles must guide us. The balance between giving and receiving, between effort and reward, is not just the measure of fairness. It's the measure of a life well lived.